Hello, everyone. Oh, I just lost my notes. No, it's okay. Can you hear me okay back there? Well, I'd just like to say how much of an honor and privilege it is here to be here today and participating in the Responsible Business Forum. Now, I'd like to focus on how businesses in particular can adopt the Sustainable Development Goals, looking at an inclusive business perspective. So a little about what CSR Asia does. We are a consultancy on sustainability and corporate social responsibility, headquartered out of Hong Kong, but we have a number of different offices around Asia Pacific. One of our flagship programs that we have is called the Strategic Partners Program, which is an environment or a network of 80 different companies and organizations, which provides an environment for companies and organizations to speak to one another about the challenges and the opportunities that they face in the corporate social responsibility and sustainability sector. Here are the number of different strategic partners that we have. As you can see, Oxfam is one of those partners. We have been working with Oxfam India in particular for a number of years on inclusive business, on a range of different publications, some of which are actually available to you in the back of our at the table at the back of the room, which you can make a reference to. The focus of some of the publications that we look at is how inclusive business can affect different sectors and different focuses. So what we do in terms of the inclusive business space at CSR Asia is that we promote the collaboration of partners. There's been a lot of discussion today about how partnerships can ultimately push us further as corporations, as a private sector, to do more and achieve more. Part of that is raising the appropriate awareness for inclusive business, the opportunities and challenges that exist, building capacity where there's gaps that exist within our own expertise and our understandings, and using what we've learned from the best practices in order to integrate those best practices into other instances of inclusive business. Some of the work that we've been doing right now, and one of the purposes of our involvement here today, is we've been working on a report, a primer, which showcases 9 different case studies, looking at best practice in India in inclusive business. Another project that we've been ongoing for is the Gracie project, which focuses on gender equality and agribusiness investments in Southeast Asia. Now, we've been focusing on inclusive business, as I said, for a number of years, but with the emergence of the Sustainability Development Goals, the SDGs, there is a vast opportunity for inclusive business models to contribute to the SDGs spectrum. Now, to do that, we've come up with 4 different methods based on our report on inclusive business in order for businesses to consider how to get started on the SDGs and how to begin implementing new strategies in order to achieve these new goals. The first is to do your research. Ultimately, you've heard that there's 17 different goals, but realistically, you need to understand that there should be 1 or 2 specific goals that you can achieve as a business. These goals should be logically very related to what you do as a business and your operations in order to use your resources effectively and efficiently. The second is engage with your stakeholders. Understand what people are saying within internally and externally in order to understand what is material to your company. The next is have a business plan. So this is the inclusive business perspective, and redefining products and services to meet social needs in order to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, and what we've talked about quite a bit, is transparency, accountability, which I'll speak further on later in the presentation. But transparency and accountability is crucial, and doing that is monitoring and measuring what you've done so far and what you look to achieve in terms of the targets. Now, we've developed from the report that we've created on inclusive business models in India and how they can achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, 5 specific ways for inclusive businesses to achieve these SDGs. The first is identify new opportunities. We've discussed how the bottom of the pyramid is not necessarily an opportunity, but it's more of a way to address crucial social needs, and to do that is to redefine products and services. So looking at outside the traditional sense of what you understand for the products that you create, and find new ways in order to extend your distribution networks. So utilizing cross-sector and community-based partnerships as a company in order to more effectively use what you have in terms of your operations to more effectively go into these communities and produce products and services that are going to be more effective and more reaching to what they want and what they demand. Second is stimulate innovation. This is crucial because stimulating innovation should be enabling the creative and entrepreneurial culture. And part of that is there's an untapped market, as I said before, in the bottom of the pyramid in terms of there's an enormous amount of potential that can be created in terms of entrepreneurship. So developing new ways to incorporate marginalized groups along to the value chain and supply chain to be more effective and more efficient in what you do. And this comes in part to utilizing your technology. So utilizing technology in the sense of using what you have available to you within your company in order to further reach and provide these products and services to these communities. We've discussed this earlier today as well. Part of the opportunity that exists in promoting or creating better sustainable livelihoods for marginalized groups is creating and empowering new jobs. Encouraging full and equal participation of women and men is what we discussed earlier today, as there's a discrepancy that's already existing with the disparity of men and women within these roles. So this in part comes into, there's an untapped employee market in terms of women and persons with disabilities. And to do that, you need to provide the necessary training and capacity building opportunities to these marginalized groups. To expand more on the gender equality, so as was mentioned earlier today as well, is that only about 50% of the large companies in India actually have an independent director who is a woman on their board. Doing this would help your company not only in the sense of having some further diversity within the perspective of the board, but also as shown within our report that there's quite a bit of productivity changes that happen with the incorporation of women within at the board level and also in the sense of the grassroots level. So gender equality, thinking in the sense of rethinking business models. So considering women in the value chain and supply chain as a last mile distributor. Now transparency, we've also discussed this earlier today as well. It's building trust, accountability, and credibility. So with the emergence or the announcement of the index today is a very good example of the potential of transparency in order to promote competitiveness within your own, amongst your own peers within your industry and beyond. So be accountable not only in the sense of what you've achieved, but also be accountable in what you have shortcomings in. So be accountable for the social and environmental impact, both the positive and the negative. And track progress. So the goals that you create in the SDGs and as a business, make sure to continue to track your progress, as progress can ultimately be able to benefit you as a company and also benefit you in terms of the sector that you belong in. And from there, share best practices. So you're only going to be able to benefit yourself in terms of being a company if you share what you've been able to do individually and also as a sector. Now, if there's any sort of takeaway that I can summarize very briefly in what was discussed in terms of how inclusive business models can help achieve sustainable development goals, is that there are specific do's and don'ts. Focusing on prioritizing what is actually material to you in terms of consulting with your stakeholders, so both external and internal. Setting ambitious but realistic targets. So understanding that the Sustainable Development Goals has a framework in place which has already identified what targets that you can achieve. So setting targets based on your individual companies in order to achieve the targets that are placed within the SDGs and tracking those. Work in partnership. You can achieve so much on your own, but you can achieve so much more if you work in partnerships. And that should be in part with the public sector and CSO sector, so NGOs and the government. And part of the reason why you, as a private sector, that it's beneficial to do this is that you keep the government accountable. So working as a private sector and working with what the the government is able to do in terms of providing resources to these types of these issues is that as the private sector, and it was said earlier, there's an explicit statement within the SDGs that requires now, which is the difference between the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, is that it requires the private sector to do more and create new solutions based on the resources that are available to the companies in order to achieve more and achieve the SDGs. Now I hope that next year's forum we'll be able to use some of the learnings that we're here in understanding what to prioritize, what to look at, how to identify new products and services which are going to create new potential in identifying the Sustainable Development Goals, and to be realistic about what you're doing and continue to do more and more. And I hope that next year there will be more opportunities for companies to come up here and state what they've done in just 1 year. So I'd like to thank you and thank Oxfam India for this opportunity, and thank you very much.